Okay, first grade, what we will be doing today is we'll be practicing our drawing for our landscape. We have two boxes and we're going to talk about the second one in a little bit, but we're going to be focusing on the top one first. Before we start, just like any project, I need you to please write your first name, as much of your last name as you know how to write, and your class code. If you are in Mrs. Gross class, you will be 1G. If you are in Mrs. Colliard's class, you will be 1C. And if you are in Mrs. Herden's class, you will be 1H. Now that we learned about what a landscape is, the first thing that we need to do is we need to draw that horizon line, the line that separates the sky from the ground. For this video, we are just focusing on what is the easiest way to do that. And for our first one, we are going to go ahead and we are just going to draw a line that goes straight across horizontally. So just a nice straight line that goes all the way from the left all the way to the right. Now that we have our horizon line, we're going to add two things that are very important for this project. The artist that we're going to be learning about next class period, named Undervossen, did two things very different than a lot of other artists. He would draw trees a different way, and he would draw buildings a different way. The way that he would draw trees is the same way you would start off, with two vertical lines very close together. So his would be really skinny trees and they would be solid black. Now that's not very different probably from the way that you start drawing a tree. What makes his pictures special is the tops of the trees. He would start with a big circle. He would do a medium circle. And then he would do a small circle. So it kind of looks like a lollipop, or it looks like a target. Please remember, we don't want to do more than 3 circles because we want to keep this simple, and we will not be using crayons, colored pencils, or markers. For this one, we are going to be using yarn to decorate it. The second thing that he did different is his buildings looked different. In other countries, buildings don't always have a rectangle or a triangular shape. So the bottom would be very similar to what we're used to by drawing a square or a rectangle. But instead of doing a triangle on the top, he did a shape that looks very similar to a Hershey's Kiss, where it's round on the bottom and it comes to a big point at the top. So we're going to use these two so that we can do some different things with our decoration and learn about another artist in the way that he liked to draw trees and buildings. So because this is an easy one, we are only going to draw 2 things. You can either do 2 trees, you can do 2 buildings, or you can do a building and a tree. So on top of my horizon line, I'm going to choose to do a tree, and I'm going to try a building. Now you don't have to do a tree and a building. You could do 2 trees, you could do a building, or you could do tree on this side, building on this side. So it's up to you, but for this first one, we're only doing 2. Okay, first grade, now that you have your first draft, I'm going to show you how we can make it better. On this bottom one, you're going to notice that we have a grid. We have a vertical line in the middle, and we have a horizontal line in the middle, and we've broken our picture up into 4 different sections. Now, artists use this all the time because it helps them knowing where to put things, and it helps with size when drawing pictures. Typically, what I'll see when I'm walking around the room is when people do the easy one, they'll draw their horizon line very high, and they'll run out of room for their trees and their buildings. So a majority of their picture is just the ground with very little sky and very small buildings and trees. Now, our picture is about buildings and trees, so we want to make sure that we give lots of room so we can make them big. Some kids will go the opposite, and they'll have a lot of sky, but they'll have a very small amount of land, and then they'll draw their house or their tree also very small. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that our horizon line splits perfect. So for this one, we're just going to trace along the horizontal line on our piece of paper. So that's why this is the easier drawing. Now we're going to focus on our vertical line that separates our pictures on the left and right. Because we have 2 sides and we're drawing 2 things, we want to make sure that we're taking up as much of the left and as much of the right as we can. Looking up here, I have both my tree and my building only on one side of my picture, and there's nothing over here on the right, which makes my picture not as fun and interesting to look like if I had things on both sides. On the bottom one, I have my tree all the way over to the left and my building all the way over to the right, and I'm leaving a lot of empty space in the middle. So you're not going to change this drawing. If you drew a tree in a building, you're going to draw a tree in a building down here. But this time what we're going to focus on is making sure that we're taking up as much space as we can. So right now I have a really big building and a really big tree, bigger than my top one, and I have equal parts of sky and land, which will make my picture more balanced and more interesting to look at.